I'm going to do some of the presenting in Spanish and then, of course, ask you the questions in English. Well, you go ahead and answer, and if there's any questions. Okay, so we're on live. Bueno, bienvenidos. Estamos transmitiendo en directo desde Fundación León. Hoy tenemos el gusto de presentar al director de la Oficina de Políticas de la Información del Departamento de Justicia de Estados Unidos, el señor Bobak Talebian, que ha accedido a presentar una entrevista junto con nosotros. Queremos darle el agradecimiento a Cristian Farale, que es el secretario de Comunicación Pública de la provincia de Tucumán, que nos acompaña en esta entrevista, a Julio Picabea, que es el director del Observatorio de la Pobreza de Fundación León, y por supuesto a la Embajada de Estados Unidos en Argentina, que nos acompaña en esta iniciativa. It's a pleasure to have you here, Mr. Talebian, and as we were saying before, we feel a bit more near to your office and to FOIA. We know that we're quite a few kilometers away from Washington, but with technology, we're a little bit nearer. And thank you for doing this interview with us. It's very important to hear about access to information and the public's right to know. Es muy importante saber sobre el acceso a la información pública y la importancia de la transparencia en temas de información, de lo cual nos va a hablar esta tarde el señor Talebian. Antes de empezar, Cristian, no sé si quieras decir unas muy breves palabras. Cristian is going to say some brief words.
Simplemente agradecerles a ustedes por la invitación, ¿sí? A todas las personas que están participando, por supuesto los funcionarios y demás, a la Fundación León desde ya, y nada, simplemente decirles que estamos a disposición para lo que ustedes puedan necesitar.
Gracias, Cristian. Just saying thank you for being here, and especially for the Office of Information Policy from the Justice Department in the U.S. Thank you, Mr. Talebian. Okay, so we're going to start with the questions. Vamos a empezar con las diferentes preguntas que preparamos para hoy, que como saben tienen que ver con el acceso a la información. We're going to ask you a few questions that have to do with the topic that we're working in here in Fundación León on access to information. So the first question is, what is the Freedom of Information Act and why is it important for transparency and democracy? En español, ¿qué es la Ley de Libertad de la Información y por qué es importante para la transparencia y la democracia? Mr. Talebian.
Thank you for the question, and I want to first thank you for the invitation to be here today. It's my pleasure to be here to talk about a topic, obviously, that we're very passionate about here in my office and in the U.S. So the Freedom of Information Act, or otherwise we call it the FOIA, is one of the primary mechanisms or tools here in the U.S. for promoting government transparency and allowing access to information to the public. The FOIA allows for any person, regardless of citizenship, to make a request to any agency, any federal agency, for any agency record. And agencies are then required to search for and review those records with an eye towards disclosure. FOIA requires agencies to respond to requests generally within 20 working days, but under certain circumstances, extending that to an additional 10 working days. It also provides accountability. Agencies, requesters who are dissatisfied with an agency's response can appeal administratively within the agency, seek the services of dispute resolution, either within the agency or in a separate office in the National Archives, or seek judicial relief. Agencies are required to process records responsive to FOIA requests with an eye towards disclosure, as I mentioned. FOIA is considered a disclosure statute, and agencies can only withhold information if it meets the requirements of 9 narrow categories, 9 narrow exemptions that protect important interests such as national security, an individual's personal privacy, or law enforcement interests, for example. And even so, the FOIA requires that even if the requirements of those exemptions are met, that agencies must consider foreseeable harm in the disclosure. And if there's no reasonable likelihood of foreseeable harm, that agencies should disclose the information. The FOIA also requires agencies to consider partial releases when full releases cannot be made, and to segregate non-exempt information from exempt information. The whole idea being that this is a disclosure statute operating under the presumption of openness to provide requesters as much information as possible. And just recently, our Attorney General Garland, issued a memorandum and new FOIA guidelines to agencies that reemphasized this presumption and the purpose of FOIA. And he stated that in doubt, openness should prevail. And so why is FOIA important? Well, FOIA is important because it goes to the very core of our democracy. In order for people to be able to meaningfully participate in government, and also to be able to hold those who are governing accountable, which is essential to a democratic democracy, a democratic government, they need to have the knowledge to be able to do that. They need to know what their government is up to. And that's the core purpose and mission of FOIA. I see, and it's very heavily used in the United States. Last fiscal year alone, agencies received and processed over 800,000 requests, and proactively posted over 37 million documents. The FOIA is known for allowing people to make requests for records, but it also has proactive disclosure requirements. Agencies must proactively disclose certain categories of records without even a request coming in for it. For example, final statements of policy, or even records that have been requested 3 or more times. Agencies are required to post that online. And so it serves as a primary mechanism to inform the public, and it's a very important part of our democracy.
Thank you for your answer, Mr. Talebian. I think it's 2 things are very interesting that you said. Is first, it's very fast, 20 working days. That's really impressive, and the volume of the requests, I think, is also really interesting to know about. And I think FOIA is really an example for the whole world, and especially for Latin America. And we're really working to buy FOIA standards and to somehow bring them to Latin American countries. Un poco lo que hablamos recién es la importancia de la libertad, de la Ley de Libertad de la Información de Estados Unidos. Tiene realmente una rapidez de 20 días hábiles para contestar los pedidos, y además el volumen de pedidos que tienen durante el año, que fueron 800,000 en este año, la verdad que es impresionante. Así que es un muy buen ejemplo de política pública que hay en Estados Unidos. We'll go ahead for the second question we prepared, which is, what is the public's right to know? Why is the U.S. a global leader in freedom of information?
So, like I said, the public's right to know, it's really forms the core purpose of the FOIA. And it boils down to, in order for citizens or people to be able to meaningfully participate and work with their government, they must be able to understand what their government is up to. President James Madison, who's widely regarded as the father of our U.S. Constitution, once wrote that knowledge will forever govern ignorance, and a people who mean to be their own governors must arm themselves with the power which knowledge gives. And fast forward to 1966, President Johnson signed into law the Freedom of Information Act, which shifted our access to information law to one which was on a need-to-know basis to a one that applies on the operation of the presumption of disclosure. So over 55 years now, we've, and this was one of the first access to information laws in the world. Over the past 55 years, Now, many countries have used our model, and to establish their own access to information laws and to improve upon them. In the US, we've worked with many foreign delegations in countries to help improve access to information laws around the world. And as I said, here in the US, our access to information law, the FOIA, is heavily used. Over 800,000 requests received and processed. And we see the benefits of that every day, seeing all types of citizens using it, from journalists who are investigative journalists who are making breaking news, to civil society advocates, to the everyday citizen who wants to know more about their government, or information about themselves and public benefits. And so through these many years of implementing a law and constantly evolving, the FOIA has been amended many times over the years to adjust to new issues, emerging issues, with the core purpose of having a presumption of disclosure. We've been being able to help other countries with the similar efforts.
And I think you were saying that there's lots of people who use the FOIA, and especially civil society, and that this really interested me because we're civil society, and I think, yes, it's very important for nonprofits, for example, to have access to information, because we can also plan and make new projects based on this information. So that's really that's very interesting, and I think that Argentina, that has an access to information law in the national level, has this example to go on. So thank you for your answer. Bueno, hablamos un poquito sobre la importancia de la ley como estándar a nivel internacional para otros países, y la importancia de que otros países puedan tomar este ejemplo de Estados Unidos para que le sirve no solamente a periodistas, sino también a la sociedad civil y hasta a ciudadanos comunes que quieren acceder a información y saber qué están haciendo los gobiernos. The third and final question we had for you this afternoon is, what is the Office of Information Policy, and how does it play a key role in the U.S. government?
Well, thank you. So my office, the Office of Information Policy, or we like to call it OIP, we implement the department's responsibilities of overseeing and encouraging government-wide compliance with the FOIA. We currently have over 118, 119 agencies that are subject to the FOIA. And these are the agencies that are receiving the 800,000 requests and processing the 800,000 requests. And so in our role, we encourage compliance and oversee in a number of different ways. First and foremost, we know from experience that in order to have a successful FOIA administration, it is essential that those people that are implementing the FOIA professionals have a proper understanding of the legal and policy parameters, and have the resources to be able to correctly implement the law. So my office helps in a number of ways. We provide government-wide training. So we have live government-wide training that more recently now we're doing over the web, and every year train thousands of FOIA professionals on all aspects of FOIA, and where they can ask questions and answers. They can ask questions and get answers from the subject matter experts that we have in my office. We've also provided agencies standard electronic training resources, so that every agency has training resources available to them, not just for FOIA professionals, but for the entire agency. The department's motto has long been that FOIA is everyone's responsibility, not just those professionals within the agency that process requests. So we have training, that training available. We also provide a FOIA counselor service line to agencies so that they can come seek legal advice from us on how to implement the FOIA in real time. And provide other resources, such as a comprehensive guide to the FOIA that in detail lays out all the legal requirements of all aspects of FOIA, from procedural requirements to the application of exemptions, and also a self-assessment toolkit, because that helps agencies take an objective analysis of their FOIA program from the intake of requests through workflows and so forth, and reviewing records. And so those are some of the many ways that we try to help agencies have a proper understanding of the FOIA and have effective and efficient FOIA operations. We also lead and work on a number of government-wide initiatives. For example, OIP in the department many years ago established FOIA.gov, which is the government central website for everything FOIA. So it provides the public with key information about what the FOIA is, how it works, and also specifically the information specific to each agency. For example, each agency's FOIA regulations, average processing times, FOIA handbook, FOIA libraries where information is posted online, and allows requesters from one single website to make a request to any of those agencies. I also co-chair a Chief FOIA Officer Council with the Director of the Office of Government Information Services at NARA. And the Chief FOIA Officer Council is comprised of the Chief FOIA Officer at each agency, which is the highest ranking official responsible for FOIA. And it's meant to develop recommendations for improvement. Over the past few years, we really focused on technology, holding events such as a event for artificial intelligence, the first FOIA vendor day in the federal government for the US, where we brought in all the different vendors of technology so that we could share what technology is out there for agencies to implement to help with their FOIA processing. And then finally, we help oversee agency compliance with the FOIA and keep agencies accountable by issuing guidelines and managing reporting obligations that they have that reflect on their performance in FOIA. There are two key reports that agencies must provide to the department every year and that are publicly posted online. First is an annual FOIA report, which details key statistics about agencies' FOIA administration, from the number of requests they've received, process, what is in their FOIA backlog, what the disposition of those requests were, and if exemptions applied, what exemptions were applied, processing times. I mentioned that the FOIA requires that we respond to requests within 20 or 30 working days. We can't always meet those deadlines, but this shows you how agencies have done with their simple requests. We try to make sure that our simple requests are processed within 20 working days and their complex requests. And then another report is that agencies are required to provide us is a Chief FOIA Officer report, which each year OIP issues new guidelines and new questions in key areas of FOIA administration, where we want to make sure that agencies are applying a presumption of openness, making sure they have effective systems in place, removing barriers to access, focusing on technology, proactive disclosures, and timeliness. We then review those reports and provide government-wide summaries and assessments. We score agencies on different milestones, and also then use that to provide and inform our guidance to agencies. So through all these efforts, our primary mission is to help agencies improve FOIA, provide them the proper guidance and training to administer the law correctly and effectively.
Well, it's really impressive, everything your office is doing.
Thank you.
And, we're really FOIA fans. We've used a lot the website, and it's really interesting for us. So thank you for sharing that with the world. And I think that it really helped us here in Fundación León with a project that Julio coordinated this and last year with the US Embassy in Argentina, that was called Informed Citizens. And it was actually a project based on FOIA standards and everything you're doing at your office that helped citizens in the north of Argentina to access information. And we built a toolkit for access to information, and it's available. Everything is easy to use and available online on our website. So I think that's kind of the results maybe your office is having internationally, and that many countries are looking to kind of follow in that example. So thank you for sharing this with us and here today in the interview, and for sharing all this information on your website and with the rest of the world.
Oh, thank you so much. And I can't tell you how much I appreciate that and how good that makes us feel. And very much appreciate your sharing your experiences. And I feel in good company. We have a mutual, obviously, strong interest on this topic is really important to our countries.
It is, and we're really also thankful for the U.S. Embassy who connected us and who's always looking to promote the link between the U.S. and Argentina. And so, well, we don't want to take more of your time, but thank you for answering our questions, and thank you, Julio and Christian, for accompanying us today. It was wonderful to talk to you, and I'm sure that many of our followers on YouTube and on our social media will be happy to listen to all your answers and to know a little more about the OIP and FOIA. So thank you a lot, and we'll certainly be in touch in the future.
Please do, and thank you as well. It's been great being with you today.
Thank you. Goodbye. Hasta luego. Well, thank you very much, Mr. Talebian. It was great to know you, and we'll definitely be in touch through the embassy.
Thank you so much. It's likewise, and I please do keep in touch.